Hi, everybody. My name is Angela Fritz, and I currently serve as assistant professor at the School of Library and Information Science at the University of Iowa, where I teach classes on archives and digital preservation. And I've been incorporating generative AI in my classes through both experiential learning and reflective discussion since about fall 2024, so about a year now. And my presentation really draws from that classroom experience by exploring the changing nature of advocacy for GLAM institutions in the age of AI. My presentation also borrows from a chapter from my upcoming book entitled AI and Digital Leadership. In this book, I maintain that as generative AI becomes more normalized in society, GLAM institutions will need to advocate for the value of human-centered stewardship as the public's perception of libraries, archives, and museums change. These changes will usher in greater necessity as well as opportunities for GLAM institutions to leverage partnerships and networks to refine their advocacy and outreach roles. In addition, the next decade will be marked by questions relating to how human labor is valued. As the world moves towards more AI-enabled technologies, essential questions will emerge regarding how human labor may be replaced or reskilled. This will likely translate into significant job redesign for many people. Given these challenges, it's important that GLAM advocacy initiatives prioritize the value of human-centered intellectual work of digital practitioners that encompass ethical problem solving and creativity, as well as a unique capacity for empathy and care. With this as an introduction, I wanted to turn to some definitions of traditional advocacy and discuss a bit about the changing nature of advocacy in the age of AI. For this traditional definition, I'm borrowing from Kathleen Rowe's book, Advocacy and Awareness for Archivists, which was published in 2019. Advocacy in this context is defined as giving a focused, purposeful message to a targeted audience in order to affect positive change. This function moves beyond the general goals of awareness because it involves working towards an explicit change. So there are many components of this definition that are really important. The idea of a focused, purposeful message and a targeted audience, with the outcome being working towards explicit change, focusing on positive action. Advocacy is directed at affecting change in support of a digital stewardship program or a digital preservation program. In this context of digital stewardship, we know that advocacy operates on a broad front of continuous engagement, from informal frontline advocacy, which we engage in on a daily basis, to more formal institutional planning. Advocacy in the age of AI still encompasses these elements, but there are a variety of different in addition tos, right? The idea that advocacy in the age of AI represents movement towards a more collective, community-centered approach that prioritizes human-centered design, ethical values, well-being, safety, fairness, accountability, and equitable access, all supported by professional networks working towards collective impact. In the age of AI, advocacy networks are central to that digital practitioners engage in. And advocacy in this context is comprised of interconnected groups of institutions, communities, and individuals who collaborate to promote shared values and ethical frameworks that support responsible stewardship practices and ethical use of AI tools and systems. Advocacy networks in this context pool resources, coordinate outreach efforts, establish collective services and infrastructures, influence resource allocators and policymakers, and develop literacy frameworks to critically engage with AI technologies. These networks leverage both our digital services and our digital collections in order to achieve broader impact than any one institution could do by themselves. We have these advocacy networks. They already exist. NDSA is an excellent example of an advocacy network that has made amazing contributions to the work of practitioners across the United States. In the age of AI, these networks the importance of these networks there'll be an added urgency in really growing these existing networks to meet new challenges. In this context, advocacy networks, GLAMs navigate a distributed array of stakeholders with the goal of developing an awareness of their shared concerns, prioritizing needs, and collaborating for impact. Why is advocacy so important in the age of AI? In the future, these networks will be as important, an important opportunity to be able to articulate a more unified stance on the ethical use of AI across GLAMs. Advocacy networks can also support more collaborative approaches to AI development and implementation that include championing areas of innovation while also addressing the limitations and potential harm of AI enhanced systems and tools. Advocacy can also help raise the visibility and the necessity of human centered stewardship. By explaining the values and best practices of generative AI, GLAM institutions can leverage advocacy networks to create a culture of accountability and bridge the trust gap across the profession. Advocating for shared value statements are an important way for practitioners to assert their rights as workers, as well as make their work more visible and advocate for both their craft as well as human-centered design and stewardship practices. Advocacy networks can foster collective influence. Collective influence in this context occurs when an advocacy network presents a unified voice that can shape decisions through a combination of expertise, credibility, and a persistent, sustained presence. Collective resilience is a really important component of the theme this year of DigiPres. In the context of my presentation, collective resilience refers to a group's capacity to adapt, cope, and recover from unexpected adverse events that represent a substantive disruption to the status quo. So it's not just about being part of an advocacy network. It's really how we leverage and grow these existing networks for collaborative or collective impact. How do we, or how can we really grow and transform these advocacy networks for collective impact? In my book chapter, I suggest 3 advocacy areas that we can leverage advocacy networks to continue to grow visibility and support for our work for more collective impact. The first area is advocacy networks that support digital collection building. While community collecting initiatives are not new to the GLAM field, the evolving nature of the web and social media platforms, as well as the proliferation of AI-generated content, have and will change the parameters of contemporary collecting. As a result, many GLAM institutions are collaborating with community-based organizations to further develop their approaches to participatory collecting, reparative practices, and activities that lower the barriers for digital preservation across the GLAM sector. In the age of AI, advocacy networks are increasingly intertwined with acquisition programs that resemble data rescue campaigns, oral history projects, and rapid response collecting initiatives. In extending a network approach to advocacy initiatives, GLAM institutions and community-based organizations have an increasingly collaborative role to play in supporting the mobilization of rapid responses to capture digital collections as events unfold. We can also see that the idea of creating more representative collections can also benefit the enhanced development of AI. So through more representative collections, we have more representative training data. We can support community archives in their efforts and support initiatives that engage with metadata enrichment, which can only enhance the development of AI. A second area that advocacy networks can be used for collective impact is really fostering the connection between environmental and cultural sustainability. Historically, GLAM institutions in the United States have been slow to really address the connection between the preservation of cultural heritage and environmental sustainability in their advocacy efforts. To date, most actionable sustainability initiatives within the United States have focused on the built environment. The digital preservation community has provided some of the most actionable recommendations that frame digital collection care practices in the context of environmentally responsible guidelines with the goal of reducing GLAM's carbon footprint. Despite the urgent concerns of collective action in this area, many of our sustainability initiatives within the GLAM sector have emanated from disjointed, disparate groups of practitioners, communities of practices, professional organizations, or consultants who are outside of the field. For GLAM institutions, addressing the connection between environmental and cultural sustainability is even more pressing, given the concerns relating to AI development. To achieve greater collective impact, GLAMs will need to further invest and support these initiatives by developing broader, more global advocacy channels for education, training, and awareness initiatives. Finally, the last area, advocacy networks can promote democratic values and civic engagement by ensuring data integrity. Just as important as cultural and environmental sustainability, GLAM institutions have a collective responsibility to ensure the evidential and artifactual integrity of collections and their care. This commitment is a cornerstone of our professional values and our code of ethics, and GLAM practitioners demonstrate this commitment on a daily basis. Increasingly, these values are becoming more complex to uphold. In the age of AI, digital stewardship faces a host of ethical challenges as practitioners contend with information that is incorrect by design. In other instances, GLAM institutions must contend with the ephemerality and fragility of web-based digital content that is vulnerable to loss and erasure. With the focus on added efficiencies and innovations of AI, it's easy to forget the social and cultural responsibilities that libraries, archives, and museums have in preserving history and social memory. In the future, advocacy initiatives will have an important role to play in safeguarding the reputation of GLAM institutions as trusted sources of information, as well as ensuring inclusive access while empowering civic engagement. As a first step in accomplishing this new model for advocacy networks, we can begin by addressing the trust gap in our field by really leveraging AI literacy in training programs that will enhance the knowledge of emerging professionals, as well as the existing skills of seasoned librarians, archivists, and curators. Some of the ways that we can center advocacy and AI literacy frameworks is by promoting a critical evaluation of AI's evolving capabilities and limits, by addressing the persistence of algorithmic bias in many models, by practicing transparency and explainability, by continuing to safeguard privacy and consent-based permission models, and of course, fostering inclusive and participatory design in AI assessment and implementation, and finally, raising awareness of sustainable and responsible use. As AI literacy frameworks help to ensure the digital practitioners across GLAM can not only develop really technical competencies, but also foster a more thoughtful and community-centered approach to advocating for the adoption of AI. And really, AI literacy frameworks are central to this. This concludes my presentation. I have on my last slide my contact information if you'd like to reach out with additional comments or questions, and I look forward to taking your questions at the end of this segment. Thank you.